Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about replacement behaviors. So what is a replacement behavior? To put it simply, a replacement behavior is a behavior that is used to take place of a problem behavior. So when we have an inappropriate behavior that we want to decrease, we have to replace it with an appropriate behavior. We cannot decrease a problem behavior without teaching the individual an appropriate behavior to take its place. To do that, we have to determine what is the function. So in order to select an appropriate replacement behavior, we first have to know the function of the inappropriate behavior. Why is that important? Let's say that Johnny starts to engage in physical aggression, pinching, when presented with a task. It would be inappropriate to teach Johnny to appropriately ask for the iPad as his replacement behavior. Why? In the above circumstance, we can assume that pinching is occurring to escape the task. An appropriate replacement behavior could be to teach Johnny to appropriately request a break. Teaching Johnny to ask for the iPad would not teach him how to appropriately escape a situation instead of pinching. When teaching replacement behaviors, the function of the replacement behavior has to be the same as the behavior it is replacing, otherwise it won't work. As a reminder, there are four main functions of behavior: attention, escape, access, and sensory. So we have to analyze the behavior. When your child starts to engage in problem behavior, you have to play detective to figure out why. So you have to ask yourself, what are they trying to get out of this behavior? Your attention? To get out of something? To get something? Or is it for sensory input? It is also important to remember that behaviors may have multiple functions. Maybe today your child is pinching to get out of something, but tomorrow they are pinching to get your attention. You have to analyze each situation to figure out what the function is. Once we have determined the function, you can figure out an appropriate replacement behavior that will serve the same function. So let's look at some examples. Attention example. Let's say you're busy cooking dinner. Maria looks at you and starts to pick up her toys and throw them all over the room. You run over to Maria and tell her to stop. So what is the function of her toy throwing? We can assume that it is to get your attention. So what could be an appropriate replacement behavior? We could teach Maria to come over and ask you to play with her toy to get your attention appropriately. An escape example. Let's say Chris is at a Christmas party. It starts to get really loud when the DJ turns on the music. Chris covers his ears and runs out of the building. What is the function of his eloping? We can assume it is to escape the loud noise. So what could be an appropriate replacement behavior for that? We could teach Chris to ask to leave appropriately to escape the situation. An access example. Sam runs over to the pantry, drops to the floor, and starts to scream and cry. You open the pantry, get out the cookies, and he immediately stops crying. So what is the function of his tantrum behaviors? We can assume it is to access the cookies. So what could be an appropriate replacement behavior? We could teach Sam to sign cookie to access the cookies. A sensory example. Yusuf repeatedly bangs on random objects around the house with an open fist. He could do this for hours and hours if he is not interrupted. He does it when he is alone or around others, it doesn't matter. So what is the function of this behavior? We can assume that it is sensory. What could be an appropriate replacement behavior? For example, we could get Yusuf a bongo drum and teach him to bang on the drum with an open fist to get that same sensory input. So let's look at a little bit of our review. So whenever we have a replacement behavior that we want to decrease, we have to have an appropriate behavior to replace the problem behavior. We have to remember that the replacement behavior has to have the same function as the problem behavior. The four main functions of behavior are attention, escape, access, and sensory. Once we know the function of the problem behavior, we can find an appropriate behavior that will serve the same function. There are many, many examples that we could use as replacement behaviors, but some examples are, for attention, they could ask to play a game instead of engaging in problem behavior. For escape, they could sign for a break instead of engaging in problem behavior. For access, we could teach them how to ask for the iPad appropriately instead of engaging in some kind of problem behavior. And for sensory, for example, we could teach them to rock in a rocking chair instead of engaging in some kind of other problem behavior associated with rocking. That is the end of the slideshow, so please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.